Shalom, shalom. Thank you. Shalom to my friends here at Reach Out. I am privileged to speak with you again today and to be part of your family of faith. I was here a couple years ago for, third or fourth time, and you were very generous to me, both financially and supportive of our work among the Jewish people. I don't take that lightly. And I appreciate your belief in the gospel going to all people, including the ancient people of the covenants, the Jewish people. And as I share with you this morning about a very problematic biblical passage, Romans chapter 11, perhaps this will clarify some theological sticking points and may give you some cause to rejoice. At least that's what I hope. Because God is ever looking after us. He's ever challenging us. He's ever calling us to Himself. I believe as a result of this sermon today that you will trust God all the more. And isn't that what faith is all about? Later on in the service, you'll receive a white card, just like this. Some of you have seen those in the past from Jews for Jesus. And I hope that while I'm speaking, you'll fill that out and turn it in at the book table up the back. And we can continue to or begin sending you our Jews for Jesus newsletter, which comes out of Sydney. Even though my voice sounds like it's American, I've lived in Australia 23 years. And yes, I'm a citizen. And yes, I barrack for... It's hard. It's hard when Australia plays America in anything. I'm bifurcated. But thankfully, most of the time, we just play against New Zealand and India, so I can barrack easily. All right. Well, we're talking about Romans 11. Hopefully you have that open on your phone or iPad, or I don't know, maybe you have something like I do. It's called a Bible. All right, there you go. Romans 11. To put this in context, Paul the Apostle is teaching the Roman church about God's sovereignty and about His choices, so that the believers can be comforted when challenged by their own lack, their own insufficiency, their own sinfulness. In light of all that, and the assurance that Paul wants for the Roman believers, like he would want for the Gold Coast believers, the apostle turns his attention then to the obvious question, what about the Jewish people? If God chooses believers and you have nothing to worry about, then what about the Jewish people who were also chosen by God? Are they still in God's consideration, and does He even notice them? And what about Jewish people who don't believe anything at all? Are they still chosen? And what about an eternal plan for them and for Israel? And if you're watching somewhere else besides the Gold Coast this morning, if you're watching and it's yesterday, how do you like that? You're watching and it's 2 weeks from now, you're watching and you're in Mozambique or Moscow, and you've thought about Jewish people and you've thought about your own self, good. If God is done with the Jews, then maybe He'll be done with you as well. So that's not comfortable. Let's talk about that. Paul deals with the problem of Israel from two standpoints. In Romans chapter 9, he teaches the sovereignty of God, how God chose my people for Himself back in Abraham's day. In Romans chapter 10, he deals with Israel's failure to respond to God's righteousness, ending with the announcement at the end of chapter 10 that we are a disobedient and obstinate people. Ouch. If this be so, then, how does Paul resolve the obvious tension? Either God will, what will happen? Will Israel's disobedience win in the battle with God, or will God find a way to deal with the situation so as to safeguard His purpose? That's where Romans chapter 11 comes in. Paul will answer these questions by looking into Israel's past, present, and future, which actually brings us into today's message and our world today in what I hope is a clear and visible manner. So he asks the question, has God rejected His people? Well, Paul is the example today. Paul's answer is no. And he uses his own life as evidence of this. God is not done with the Jewish people because God saved Paul. It's kind of a no-brainer. If God were done with the Jewish people, then Paul, a Hebrew of the Hebrews, would be dismissed and not saved either. So in answer to the question, did God reject all the Jewish people? The apostolic answer is no. Or as my friends would say, niet. Okay. Elijah is the example back in his day, and you see that here right at the beginning of Romans 11. In fact, I'll read you just a few verses. Verse 1, I say then, God has not rejected his people, has he? May it never be, or your King James would say, God forbid, right? For I too am an Israelite, a descendant of Abraham of the tribe of Benjamin. God has not rejected his people whom he foreknew. Or don't you know what the scripture says in the passage about Elijah, how he pleads with God against Israel? Lord, they've killed your prophets, they've torn down your altars, and I alone am left, and they are seeking my life. Pardon my dramatization. But what is the divine, verse 4, response to him? I've kept for myself 7,000 men who've not bowed the knee to Baal. In the same way, then, there has also come to be at present time a remnant according to God's gracious choice. But if it's by grace, it's no longer on the basis of works. Otherwise, grace is no longer grace. Paul continues with the evidence from back when. Against the backdrop of serious whinging by the prophet Elijah, the Bible in 1 Kings chapter 19 says that there were 7,000 Jewish people who stayed faithful at the time of Eliyahu Hanavi, Elijah the prophet. In the same way, God has preserved from within Israel a remnant of people who love Jesus. Now, some people get this a little famished, a little confused. And they say that the remnant here applies to the church. That is, the church of Jesus has replaced the Jewish people. But that's exactly not what the apostle is saying. The evidence of God not rejecting the Jewish people is Jewish people in the church. So the remnant is believing Jews, or what we call Jews for Jesus, like me, grown up, Orthodox Jewish, came to faith in Jesus. I'm a Jew, I'm for Jesus. That the church believes, that's well and good, but that's not a fulfillment of the promises of God to Abraham. See what I mean? Psalm 94, verse 14 says, Ki lo yitosh Hashem et amo v'nachato lo yazov. The Lord our God will not abandon us. He will never forsake his people. Next, there is a remnant. Well, then Paul asks in verses 5 to 10, since Jewish people mostly, and probably the ones you know, and maybe some of you watching online right now, maybe some of you get it that Jewish people have rejected Jesus. Maybe you've said that. Well, we Christians have accepted him, but most Jews have rejected him. In fact, you might wrongly say all Jews have rejected him. That's exactly what the apostle is not saying. He's evidence, Elijah, Jewish believers, okay? So Paul says, since most Jewish people have rejected Messiah, have they fallen too far? Did their rejection of the messiahship of Jesus cause them to fail irreparably? Absolutely not, he shouts. He quotes from two Bible passages. First is Isaiah chapter 44. They don't know, nor do they understand, for he has smeared over their eyes. That's one of my favorite Bible verbs, smear, maybe because I'm male. And we like to schmutz things up a little. I don't know. He smeared over their eyes so that they cannot see, and their hearts so they cannot comprehend. And then in Psalm 69, he quotes both of these right here in Romans 11. Psalm 69 verses 22 and 23 says, may their table before them become a snare, and when they are in peace, may it become a trap. May their eyes grow dim so that they cannot see, and make their loins shake continually. Paul says that the majority of Israel's rejection of her Messiah was predicted. And it should then not surprise us that Israel has mostly said no to Messiah. Does that make sense? God uses parables. Maybe you like the parables of Jesus and Isaiah and some of the others in the prophets. But God uses parables not only to communicate his simple truths, but to prevent the hearing of those who want to be hardened against it. So that most Jewish people then, and dare I say today, continue in unbelief is actually a testimony of God to choose a remnant. Gentiles get in on it. Then in verse 11 of chapter 11 here and following, Paul says that God's purposes for you Gentiles, pardon my assumption, but most of you are not Jewish, right? Who else is Jewish besides me? I want to see. I always look around and, oh, there's Una. Okay, anybody else? We'll hang out together. We'll have some matzo ball soup or something. We'll hang on. Paul says that God's purposes for you Gentiles were helped along by most of Israel saying no to the gospel message. Without Israel knocking back Yeshua as Messiah, Gentiles would never have had a chance to hear and believe. You're welcome. Chosen by grace. He's already made a case for the choice of the remnant made on the basis of grace and not by works. And now he emphasizes that again, as I read in verses 5 and 6. And he makes sure that the Gentiles, who are not the remnant, and yet brought near, understand that they too are chosen by grace. He uses two images. One is a lump of dough and the other is wild olive branches. Verse 21 makes his point so clear. For if God did not spare the natural branches, neither will he spare you. And verse 30, for just as you once were disobedient to God, but now you've been shown mercy because of their, Jewish people, disobedience. Gentiles have a ministry. Paul says the Gentiles in the community of faith, which is nicknamed the church, have a role to play, and that's to make Israel jealous. Listen, your new car won't make a Jewish person jealous. He's got two that are better in his garage. Your money, your glamour are irrelevant to a person with more wealth. They know science. They lead the way in technology and movies. There's one thing that each of you Gentiles for Jesus, you should get a badge. Each one of you Gentiles for Jesus, you've got something every Jew wants. Your faith. You have a relationship with the Almighty. You know the living God. And that alone is what I hope you share with Jewish mates and work colleagues. When you see them and they're in turmoil, whether Anastasia has done something to them or they just think so, whether their job is still here or not, when things aren't going quite their way, when their son contracts some kind of virus or difficulty, when Jewish people go through the same hurt that you experience, and you've got faith by the which to handle it, and they don't, that's when you come alongside and you bring not, hey, have you been saved? But hey, can I hang with you? Can I pray with you? Can I be with you? That support, my friends, is massive. Every Jewish person, look, God causes the rain to fall on the just and the unjust. We all experience the rain comes, the floods come and bursts against that house. We all experience these things, some a lot, some just infrequently. But you've got what they desperately need. Do you believe that? If you believe that, you'll be alongside. Parakaleo, called alongside to help, like the Holy Spirit coming alongside That's what we need to be. That's what we need to be. When you see them and they're in turmoil, offer to pray with them or for them. Attend to their home when they've lost a loved one. Sit with them. Comfort them. Demonstrate the peace of God which passes all understanding. When you can, attend their son's bar mitzvah or wedding. Bring a good check. Let them see your calm and your patience. Be what you would want Jesus to be for them in their situations. Let them know the God of peace. That will help make them jealous. Then, don't be conceited, but fear. In verse 18, we read the Gentiles should not be arrogant toward the branches. I guess that'd be a natural thing to do, wouldn't it? You might think, those Jews, they had their chance, they knocked back the Messiah Jesus, so now it's my turn. And in a way, you're right, but the attitude of arrogance will come back to bite us if we're not careful. One of my favorite and least favorite verses in the Bible is right here in verse 22. Behold, therefore, the goodness and severity of God. These are the two poles of his hands, if you will, the two hands of God. The right hand is the hand of mercy. The left hand is the hand of judgment. He is not a one-handed deity. He offers mercy in his first coming, justice in his second coming, the warning, don't you be conceited, but fear. Well, then it's Jewish fullness time again. Verses 25 to 32. So what time is it? Jews en masse coming to faith in Messiah. The apostle says that this hardening condition on the Jewish people is temporary. That's good news for Jews. We read in verse 25 that a partial hardening has happened to Israel until the fullness of the Gentiles has come in. So there seems to be a time frame which ends for you people, not you, for y'all. There's coming a time when Gentiles for Jesus will have run their course. Whatever fullness might mean, it's clear that whatever that is, that this fullness will trigger the end of the time of the hardening. In other words, Jewish people will soften again to the gospel of grace and will receive Yeshua en masse. But Paul has already indicated that back in verse number 15, where he says this, for if their rejection, meaning the Jewish people, if their rejection be the reconciliation of the world, that is, that's how you got in on it, what will their acceptance of Jesus be but life from the dead? Let me see if I can unpack that one. Paul says that it was necessary for Jewish people to say no to Yeshua so that Gentiles could have opportunity to experience eternal life. But then God will open our eyes, remove the stupor from our blindness, and cause us to see him whom we had pierced, and we will accept him. That's not only a theory, that's a promise from heaven. I want to shout hallelujah. I hope you do too. And when that happens, Paul says, buckle your seatbelt, the end is near. The phrase resurrection from the dead implies that very culmination of global history. The Redeemer comes to Zion. When Jewish people en masse, there we go, it's over here. When Jewish people en masse receive Jesus as Savior and Lord, when Jews for Jesus are abundant throughout the world in cities and countryside alike, when every tribe and kindred and family and tongue includes Jewish people who have become believers in and followers of Jesus, then buckle your seatbelt, the end is near. That's when the Redeemer, verse 26, will come to Zion. In fact, people ask me all the time, and maybe you guys are talking about it as well, about signs of the end times. We spoke about that upstairs, Pastor Steve. Signs of the end. We talk about blue moons and blood moons, about earthquakes and famines and COVID-19. How does that fit in? What about 1948, Israel becoming a nation again after 1900 years away? Look, there's one sign that's clearer in the Newer Testament than any other sign. And that's the sign of Jewish people saying yes to Yeshua, and that's exactly what is happening and has been happening in our world today. The 19th century, there were over 200,000 Jews who came to faith and joined the church. In those days, you had to register, not just a baby consecration or what do we call that? Dedication. But adults who were baptized. Everybody's registered. 200,000+ Jews joined the church across the world in those days. To be fair, there are 13 million Jews, maybe 16 million, depending on your definition, and 6 million of those who live in the land today, the land of Israel. So there's much work to do, and we are doing that work. God bless you all here at Reach Out. Thanks for standing with us. I so appreciate it. Pastor Steve, let me give it back to you. Thanks so much.